I'm now joined by the former member of the Public Service Commission, Festus Muundjua, to highlight some of the memories shared with the late President Geingob and the late President's leadership as an administrator. Monsignor, thank you so much for making time out to join us, and we are really glad to have you here.
Thank you very much for having me. Now, where do I start? Really, I started with this man as far as 1956.
1956.
Is
that the first encounter?
That was my first encounter. That was at the Hostinium when it was in Okahanja before it was relocated to Windhoek. That's when we started.
So you went to school together?
He was he was many things. He was my classmate. And then he was also my schoolmate. In the Hostinium, he was my schoolmate. We were not in the same classes. He came a year after me. So that was the beginning. And there were things also that we used to do together. Now, if we skip that...
Let's not skip it. Let's not skip it.
All right.
What were some of the things you did together?
My goodness. Well, at the Hostinium, first of all, having come a year after me, you know, during those days, the newcomers were badly treated by the old comers. And there used to be a word in Afrikaans, recruit.
Recruit, yes.
Yeah, recruits. But this, I will use the word, Afrikaans word, recruit, for the newcomers. In the American system, there would be freshmen at the university. So recruit were the freshmen of the Hostinium, and life was not easy for them, was not nice to them. The first month, there they were forced to do all kinds of unsavory things, being mocked at and to do all kinds of things, you know. Sometimes they would say you must make the sound of a donkey, or you must go and do this or that, things that would make people to laugh at you and so on. So that was the things of the recruiter. And then comes the end of the month. At the end of the month, they had to organize a party, an amusement party, for them to win their freedom, so that they are no longer recruits. Now, that occasion, the teachers and the students would all come together in a hall, in the big hall of the Hostinium in Okahanja. Principal was there, Mr. Steenkamp, and the rest of the teachers. And then, of course, that evening, his singing choir or his concert, whatever they prepared for the occasion, actually stole the hearts of everybody. They sang so well. And then in the group, it was a group of we used to call them the Tsumeb boys. And it was himself. I don't have the names right now, but from my memory, it was himself. It was Timotheus Mutuyela. It was Yambenge. It was Veiko. It was John Otto. And then in the group, they have co-opted two other boys, not from Tsumeb. One was Willem Sarlep from Lutheritz. Another one was a short Nama fellow. I think he was from either Mariendal or Kedmansur, but I forgot his name, but we used to know him as Totsi number 1. Now,
they were the crew now.
Yeah, he was now in that group that sang that evening, the last day of the recruit system. So it was Hage in the group, it was Willem Sarlep, and then this Totsi number 1. And John Otto was also a good singer and a good dancer. He used to mimic Elvis Presley. We called him also Elvis Presley. Now, this group sang so well, and all right, that was one time. And then, apart from the singing and the choir, which was a regular choir now at the school, he was also a fellow soccer player, though he was not as good as I was.
Oh, so you were better than him?
Yes. We were on the soccer team of the Agustinium, and as I say, he was not as good as I was. And I'm sure he wouldn't agree with that one because actually he didn't want to be a second best. But luckily we have colleagues like Bena Madila is still alive. I think we still have Onesimus Akwenya, also good soccer players. Bena Madila was our school referee. And I'm sure they could help me there when I say he was not as good as I am.
Because he's a witness, he says, a primary source.
Yes.
Okay, was there any political activity at the high school, though? During the time of Agustino? Was there political activity?
The political activity during that time was very much subdued. It was not so open. And during those days, there were not even political parties in the country. The politics, if you could call it politics, it was around the things within the Agustinium. Bad treatment of the poor teachers and bad food, and still within the Agustinium setup. And that was complaints rather than politics as such.
So at that level, it wasn't really around what was going on politically outside, the racism, etc.?
No, not really. But remember, the year 1956, that is the year of the Windows change. When the British Prime Minister, Harold Macmillan, addressed the Parliament in Cape Town. And what he was saying in Cape Town, we had a big radio at the Agustinium, and we could listen to the statement that was made by the Prime Minister of England about the wind of change. Now, the wind of change was actually from oppression to no apartheid. That was mainly what he was telling this Boer Parliament. And we're listening and we're influenced by that, some of us.
So that marks, when you're looking at the maxim of the wind of change, that concept is coming from that speech.
Yeah, it's coming from that
1956, you're saying.
That's 56, and it was circulating amongst the students. And that is why I'm saying it was subdued, because we didn't want to be heard speaking about the wind of change for fear of being expelled from the school. The school was very much influenced by the Lutheran Church. But then, towards the end of course, by that time I was not even at the Agustinium. I had already finished in 1959. But then I was somewhere in the country, and come 1959, then SWANU started. 60, SWAPO started.
So 1959, SWANU starting. We've got the old location situation also happening during that year.
Then it was founded in the old location. I remember 27 September 1959. I was a founding member of SWANU. That's why I remember it. I don't have to read it from the books. I can tell you how we did it. And of course, our former president was also a founding member of SWANU, and we couldn't leave him out because he was actually one of the...
Talk to us about, but talk to us that, I know, of course, we have to unpack the administration part of that, but I think this is also quite important for us to understand the historical context as young Namibians. And we say that the former founding, of course, was also part of SWANU. Talk to us about that, the formation of SWANU and how there were from different geographical parts of the country, you were able to mobilize to be able to set up this political movement.
Now, the whole idea of forming a national political party came from New York by way of a letter that was written by Burumba Kerina. By that time, he didn't have the name Burumba Kerina. He was called, his surname was Getson. Now, he wrote a letter to an uncle of his, Aaron Kapere, who was a member of the Chief Council of Kutako. So he brought this letter to the Chief's Council, and then the Chief's Council started inviting the political who's who in the township, names like Reverend Karwaira was part of the Chief's Council, but there were other people like Levi Nganyone, the late Chingaete, Chief Chingaete, the late my cousin John Muundjua, David Meroro, and a few others, many to mention the names now. And when this letter was being circulated, Dr. Gavirwe had just come from South Africa where he had been studying. Now he was employed by the municipality of Windhoek as a social worker. also was part of the people who were consulted about this letter.
Yes.
So the letter wanted a political party to be founded, to be established in the country. And the first meeting was called. The chairman of that meeting, I remember, was Dr. Z. He was not Dr. Z, but he was Mr. Ngabirwe. And then I had the elder brother of Katutire Kaura, Gottlob Kaura, and myself. We were teaching at the Waterberg Primary School in the Okakarara area. Now it was September, the 10-day vacation for the schools in Namibia. So we came to Windhoek. This Kaura brother, Gottlob, and myself were teaching together. When we were in Windhoek, he took me to meet Dr. Ngabirwe or Mr. Ngabirwe by that time, whom I didn't know. So, and then the meeting started, and Ngabirwe suggested that Gottlob Kaura and myself be the co-secretaries of the proceedings. And later on in our lifetime, I asked Dr. Z, where are those minutes of the first meeting? He told me that, Comrade Fez, I threw them away when we were crossing the border into Botswana land. I didn't want them, if the Boers would...
If they found it on them...
On them, so I had to throw them away. That's one history that was thrown away or shredded. It's a pity. But then, of course, the letter came, and the party was established. And the problem started with the founding of the party. Who was going to be the president of the new party? The chief council, they filtered Kerina, who came up with the idea. And the name, of course, now was the Southwest Africa National Union. Now, those who were supported the new party, we didn't know Kerina at all. It's just a name that he was a petitioner at the United Nations, and we didn't know him. But then the next candidate was Jarire Tsundukodongwithi. He was now fielded as a candidate. The third one was Wacha Kaukwetu. The three now had to vie for the presidency. All right, Wacha was here. Kozongwithi, that day, he was in Accra. He had been invited by Kwame Nkrumah. And then Kerina was in New York. So the lobbying was about them, but they were not around there. Or our vote, the vote was a secret ballot. We distributed a piece of paper, small piece of paper, in which you had to say, which of the three names do you want him to be the first president of SWANU? And then the ballots were thrown on the table, and people started selecting Kerina, Wacha, Kaukwetu, and Kozongwithi. And when the tally was made, Kozongwithi emerged to be the winner. All right, now who's going to be the vice president? The argument, I can't remember who brought the argument, but he said, what about the second best of the three? Should he not be the vice president? Now, the second best was not Kerina, it was Wacha, much to the surprise of the chief council. And so Wacha became now the vice president and actually the acting president, because Kozo, we used to call him Kozo for Kozongwithi. Now, Kozo was in Accra, and therefore Wacha had to be the acting president in his capacity as a vice president. All right, this was not taken well by the Chiefs Council. They thought of themselves as having lost. And then they said, no, then we have to start our own organization where we can have Kerina as the president. That new organization, which was a stillborn, because they gave it the name of the Southwest Africa National Organization. The difference between SWANU and SWANO was the O and the U.
The U, yeah.
Then the role that was played by Dr. Ngabirwe then, oh, I wish he could hear this. I give him a credit for that one. He said, how can we start disunity when we want to start a unified movement? Why can't the two merge? Now, the matching was almost impossible because who was going to be the president was the issue. So he said, all right, why don't we say the president will be Kosongwidi by election, but then the petitions to the United Nations, which was a thing of the Chief Council. Now it won't be SWANU doing the petitioning, it will be SWANU in conjunction with the Chief Council co-signing together.
So that was the compromise?
Yeah, that was a compromise and that was accepted. And it went on well for a while, until when one day we, SWANU that is, we realized that the Chiefs Council started sending petitions on an independent basis, alone, not as per the agreement. And that was actually the beginning of the separating from, SWANU from the Chiefs Council. And there was nothing we could do. But then, of course, unfortunately, the new party was not formed. The SWANU was not formed.
It was not formed, but it
died.
still.
So, in the meantime, the SWAPO party came in the name of OPPO. And the reason why we invited the former president, the founding president, Comrade Sam Nujoma, to be a candidate for the presidency of SWANU, but he excused himself by saying, but he was already a president of OPPO and he could not be president of two things. He would rather serve in the central committee of the new party, SWANU, and he was. I remember one time
So he was serving, he was president of OPPO, but he was serving in the central committee of SWANU
yes,
as well.
Yes. His peer group could not do without him. He really had to come because he had he would represent the larger, the Ovambo voice. And therefore he had to come because the thing is a national thing and he went for it. Okay. He remained a central committee member. I remember one time I was mocking at him, playing a joke with him. I knew him very well. I know him very well. So I could afford, even today, I can afford to make jokes. I said, Comrade President, but you still haven't resigned from SWANU. We haven't got a copy of your resignation letter. So he simply laughed at me and then he said, it was during the time of the SWAPO was the sole and authentic representative of the people. Yeah.
How did it, in terms of so now high school is done, the SWANU formation has started right now. You're working with OPPO, with Sam Nujoma now as part of the central committee, etc.
Yes.
And then from that stage, you are heading into exile now. Talk to us about that transition.
Okay, the exile. Some of the SWAPO exiles started from people from Botswana and those of us who ended Botswana. Some these people were born in Botswana, but they joined SWAPO. And then we met some of them there, and we traveled with some of them from Francistown to Bulawayo. That trip was organized by Jackson Maxton Joseph. He had another name, but I forgot. I can't pronounce his Ochwambo name. But he organized the crossing over into what was then the southern Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. He helped us how to cross, giving us a tip. Actually, he advised us that we must buy a return ticket, Francistown, Bulawayo, and back. So if you have a return ticket at the crossing town, Plumtree, The moment you show that you have a return ticket, then they wouldn't bother you because they know that you would come back.
That you'll come back, yeah.
And this was a practice. People used to come back. But those of us who had intention of reaching Dar es Salaam in
don't have a return ticket, yeah.
We knew that once you are in Bulawayo, you could sell the ticket to people who want to go to Botswana.
So after high school, when is it now the next time that you and Hage Geingob are in the same space?
Okay, now after the stay as refugee in Africa, I didn't meet him in Dar es Salaam. Maybe I only met him in the United States.
It's like New York now.
Okay, so the refugee life in Dar es Salaam is another story. But when I met him again for the second time after the Agustinium, it was in the United States. We didn't have our grade 11 and 12, the matric. So then at the high school, it was a university high school. It used to be called the Temple University High School. And that's where a lot of us, himself, Hidibo, Theo Ben Gurirab, Josiah Nyamu, Zacharias Shikomba, Kalwenya, Kalenga, and others, we all were students at that Temple University High School for grade 11 and 12. And then we finished that, and from there on we went separate universities. And then whilst we were students in the United States, in 1966, I remember, if my memory serves me well, that's when he was appointed to be the representative of SWAPO at the United Nations.
Yes.
And in the same year, I was also appointed to be the representative for SWANU at the United Nations and in the United States. So there again, we were meeting now on the opposite sides of the politics. He was a SWAPO, I was a SWANU. And there we were saying things against each other's party, very unsavory things, attacking each other and so on. But that political animosity was not really a real animosity, because the old friendship of our school years at the Agustinium actually outweighed the so-called animosity of
the political animosity.
The political animosity.
Because you're there to fight for the same thing, isn't it?
Yes.
The liberation of Namibia.
Okay, so we there again. But then one thing happened one evening. If we really have to say, how do I remember him?
Some of the fond memories. Yeah.
Yes. During the day, we had a rough talks against each other, a tiff. Now, we were appearing as a group of petitioners from Southwest Africa, in front of the Southwest Africa, the United Nations Committee on Southwest Africa. It was a subcommittee of the UN. There, it was now myself for SWANU, Prof. Kerina, Michael Scott, Jacob Kuhangwa, and Hage Geingob. That was now the lineup on the table of the petitioners.
Sure.
And there the firework started there, you know. Now, at the end of the day, I used to spend my evenings in those 24-hour movies in New York. I didn't have enough money to go in for the bed and breakfast. Now, sitting there, you watch the first movie for 2 hours, and then when it says the end, people will get out, others will come in. So I stayed put just for the night, for a sleep there on the chair. Then I realized I was very low on money and I could not spend to pay even for the next session. I went to him and I said, Comrade Hage, please, may I have your key of your flat to sleep there, because I have nowhere to sleep. He remembered the day, the meeting at the United Nations, and he burst into a laughter and mocking at me. He said, what? You were attacking me this afternoon in the meeting, and now you want my key for my flat. Actually, he hardly finished saying that, and then who comes? The ambassador from Zambia, Ambassador Vernon Mwanga. He happened to pass by as this man was laughing and mocking at me. And he stopped him and said, Comrade Ambassador, listen to this man. He was pointing at me. This man was attacking me, but now he wants my key to sleep in my flat. Can you imagine? So Ambassador Vernon Manga joined him a little bit in the laughter, and then he said, and I quote the ambassador, that's a Namibian problem, you solve it. And then off he went. So he left us staring at each other. I was a bit nervous. I didn't even know what he was going to say or to do about my request for the key. So then after the ambassador left, Hage laughed a little bit and he exhausted his laughter, and then he said, all right, comrade, let's go. So we went. He took me to the subway from the New York area, 42nd Street, all the way up to 96 is where he was having his flat near the Columbia University. So we got out of the subway, we went into a shop, and he bought pieces of raw chicken, tea, sugar, milk, butter, onions, and a bag of potatoes. It was quite a lot. And then he paid for that. And then from there we went over to his flat, and he gave me the key, and he said, okay, I'm now rushing to go and join the last subway train to go to another section of New York where he was staying with Patty, the first wife. Then he left me alone in that flat. I cooked.
With the food?
With the
food wasn't even part of the initial request.
I first cooked, and I took a shower. I needed that one very much. And then the following day, we had to continue at the United Nations. And I needed some typing papers, and I didn't have a typewriter. I didn't have the papers.
And this is not during the time where you are so-called opponents now?
Yes, exactly. Now I'm alone there, and I say, my goodness, where do I get the papers to write the next statement for the next session? And I looked around, and then into his study room, I saw a typewriter. And then I saw a bunch of SWAPO. It was actually the letterhead in a bunch. Then I said, these are the papers, these are the typewriter. Now I'm going to use my 2 fingers. But then how can I write now a SWANU statement on a SWAPO letterhead? I took a ruler, which was not far away from there, and I tore the letterheadings, the words, and then I did a mistake. I didn't shred it. I just threw it in the waste paper basket. In the morning when he came, he saw this and he said, what is going on? He called me. He said, what is this? I was so embarrassed. Then I put up an embarrassed kind of, as if I started mocking at him. I said, you know what it is, why are you asking me? But why did you not shred it? It was stupid. I said, no, I forgot about it. I said, man, my friend, I'm so embarrassed. Can we talk about something else? Anyway, that is now the Hage to me. Was he really a political enemy or a friend? He was a friend. The politics was only when we are having
when you were in the arena.
Yes, whether a workshop elsewhere in town or in the United Nations when we lobbying the ambassadors and so on, but otherwise out of that, and that was true of all the Namibians. The other people from Zimbabwe, from South Africa, they were wondering, but you fellows from West Africa, where are you? You are SWANU, you are SWAPO, but then you are friends and so on. What's going on?
What's
when
going
we were
on
hacking
here?
at each other, Zimbabweans were saying the same thing. Say, well, that's us.
That's not, I think, because it was important to really just reflect on that, looking at the primary school, because you're the only person we have spoken to that in fact that went to school together with him, to just reflect on that leading up to, of course, even before independence. I want to come now to the time when you're, I'm not sure, correct me here if I'm wrong, was it the Government Service Commission? Or?
It was, all right, before that it was also our togetherness at the United Nations Institute.
Or at UNIN.
In Lusaka.
So that gets formed in 1976 in Lusaka?
Yeah, yes. That was before I became a member of the Government Service Commission when I returned back.
Take me through that one.
All right. Now, that one, when the institute was established, they looked around for lecturers, and they exhausted. They recruited from different countries of the world. He recruited Ghanaians and Ethiopians and Zimbabweans. There was a fellow from the Sudan, Dr. Ernaka or Al-Naka, and a lot of Zimbabweans, Mr. Uche Okunze, Mr. Mshonga, and Dr. Ngube. And so, but then they needed somebody, the Department of Education, we had two people there. It was a fellow from South Africa, Mr. Billy Modize. Billy Modize, I think Hage went and buried him in South Africa. And Dr. Moseshi Tendero, those two, but they needed another one. And they couldn't find a lecturer to join the Department of Education. Then Hage, as he told me later on when I joined, because I asked him, how did you get to find me for this job?
Where were you that time?
I was in Nigeria.
Okay.
I was employed by the Nigerian government, Department of Education, in the state of Kaduna, one of the states of Nigeria, in the department, in the Ministry of Education. So now, Hage, he asked the former president, founding president Sam Nujoma, that he needed a nurse and a lecturer, a nurse for the institute, but a lecturer in the Department of Education. Exhausted everywhere, but would the president mind if he invited Festus Muundjua to come and join us, because he was also schooled in the direction of education, together with Dr. Mose. We were schoolmates, and I was a classmate with the late wife of Dr. Chitendero, Sandy. She was my classmate. Anyway, so the president, when he got this question, should I recruit Muundjua, and he asked, but where are Mr. Muundjua and his wife, Pumotu? Then Hage told the president, no, he is teaching in Nigeria. No, get him over. So he wrote us two letters, one for me, one for my wife, inviting us to come and join the institute. And I didn't have a problem there, because the question was between me and my wife in Nigeria. When I opened my letter from the post office, I knew what was in it. I didn't open hers. I took hers to herself. She opened and she said, wow, what's going on? I said, no, Hage is inviting us to come and join the institute. Then my wife said, what are we going to do? I said to her, look, if for Pan-Africanistic considerations we left our good jobs in America and we opted to come in Nigeria, now Namibians
are saying come.
Should we now, the choice is between whether for Nigerians or for Namibians.
And the context during that time is that you were still political opponents, of course. You're part of the SWAPO, he was part of SWAPO and you were part of SWANO.
Yes. So then we decided, no, we have to join the institute. So we wrote back to say, okay, no, we would come. You arrange for our coming, we will come and join you. So the arrangement was made. Actually, luckily, it was towards the end of my contract with the Nigerian government. And I didn't, now I had plans to renew it, but with this offer, I decided I'm not going to renew it. So the arrangement was made for us to go to New York. There was no plane going straight from Nigeria to Zambia. So we had to go via New York, and from New York, Accra, and then Lusaka.
So this is so crazy. Like for me, in my young mind, I can't fathom that. So I have to fly from Nigeria to New York, come back from New York to Nigeria's neighbor, Accra, Ghana, back again.
Yeah, there was
from
no
there
straight
to
flight
Lusaka, and then
nothing between Accra and Lusaka. So you had to go back to, because the contract said during the vacation, the Nigerian government will take you back to where they recruited you. And now, luckily, it was New York.
So you had to go back there before you...
So we had to go to New York, and from there I put in a resignation that I'm no longer going to...
How was his directorship? How was it as director? I think particularly looking into the future administration of the new government, because many are saying that was the primary objective of Union, was to train civil servants for the administration of the new government after independence.
Okay. Now the arrangement for us to fly to Lusaka was made, and there we landed. That late morning at the Lusaka International Airport, we didn't know what was going to happen once we land. Then, whom do we see welcoming us at the airport? It was Hage and Dr. Museshi Tendero. And when I saw them, wow, what a reunion. And he was actually, after clearing the immigration, actually, I don't know how he got it, he was inviting us to go via the diplomatic exit.
So that's now Hage doing Hage things.
Yes. So there he, after checking out and our luggage out, he hugged me. It was a prolonged hugging, really. And thereafter he went over to my wife, because we knew each other from the America days, we used to visit each other. His flat now became actually the home for Namibians. So there we said, then he said, Comrade Fess, he used to call me Festus, Fess, my wife Pumoto or Pum, I'm glad that you have accepted to come and join us. This is a United Nations Institute, it's not a SWAPO Institute, and I'm glad you have come to join us. From the airport, he took us to the dining hall. It was lunchtime. Now, I'm saying these things to know, for the audience, the listeners out there, to start picking up the Hage of today. How did he start becoming the Hage that is now, the former Hage, which is now reincarnated into the one of today? So he took us straight to the dining hall, and there the lecturers and the students were all there. Apparently they had been forewarned that the new lecturer is coming. So we went in there, our suitcases still in our cars. Okay. And then he introduced me to the lecturers and the students, and then from nowhere he started calling names from the other lecturers before us. Uchewo Kunze, Dr. Ngupe, Dr. Chiryanke, and Billy Modise, and a few others. He called them to stand up. They were seated separately amongst the students, lunchtime. Then he said, you see, the policy here, all these people and the students, we are all comrades, all struggling for the independence of our country, and therefore there is no them and us. So we are all comrades, and that is why we are sitting like this, eating from the same pot and so on.
Even though we might come from different political backgrounds, yeah.
So, and after that, he put me on the spot. He said, would you like to say something? Oh, I wasn't prepared for anything. But then, of course, I couldn't say no. So I stood up and I said, okay. I wasn't prepared to make a statement. I would rather defer it to an opportune time, because I haven't actually unpacked. I'm still in my suitcases. I haven't reached my destination where I'm going to sleep. So when I have unpacked and another occasion comes, that is when I'm going to make a proper statement. And I sat down. And then they clapped, Omake. The whole hall.
The whole hall.
I don't know what I said for them to give me a hand clap,
I think the public service conversation, we'll have it on another occasion. I think it was important for us to have this historical reflection on the man before independence. Before I let you go, and we'll bring you back for the public service conversation, just your legacy in terms of who he was, his character as a person, how would you remember him, and what kind of legacy does he leave behind? Very briefly.
For the public service?
I think the public service, we can still get to that. As a comrade, as a man, as a liberation struggle fighter, what sort of legacy does he leave behind as Hage the man?
Man, I remember him when he was... One time I said, Hage, why are you giving so much money to everybody, especially when the plane fighters would come to Lusaka for one reason or another, and they were broke, and they needed almost anything or everything, and he would go all the way to even deplete his local account. And he came back, he came to either me or Chitendero to borrow money to help these comrades, the plain fighters, and not only plain fighters, but all other SWAPO fellows. And I said, why do you play a bobcat or an ATM machine for these people when you, at times you don't even have it and you go to the extent of borrowing for them when you don't even have it? Why can't you tell them that you don't have it when you don't have it? Why should you also now go into a debt? He said, Comrade Fess, these people won't believe that I don't have money. They think being a director is money, quote unquote. So he was so generous, generous. Even the Zambian friends of his who would go to the United Nations and who would need more dollars than they allowed S&T, they would come for him to ask for the American dollars if he had it, or to write a check for them in exchange for the kwacha, the Zambian currency. And even when he depletes his United Nations, his UN account at the UN, he will still come to Mose and Chitendero to borrow this. And that is why I'm saying, why do you play a bobcat? So now his generosity is one thing that I will never forget. And something else, I hope that people will listen to this one and you have a minute for this one.
Unfortunately, we are very, very tight on time. I think we'll bring you back for more conversation.
All right.
And we'll leave it at that for now.
Beautiful.
Thank you very much for making time out to really just come in and have this conversation with us.
It's a pleasure.
Well, of course, there we have it. I think just soaking in the history and some of the details, even before independence, very, very important reflections there by Festus Muundjua, who was at the same school with President Geingob, of course, also worked together in the United Nations when he was petitioning as a SWAPO member as well as a SWANU member in his case, and up until working together at the United Nations Institute for Namibia UNIN. We will bring him back, of course, just to reflect a little bit more on the public service. That's Mr. Festus Muundjua, one of the first public service commissioners in the country. We'll be back.